The workshop was quiet that morning. Dust hung in the air like soft clouds, and the sun streamed through the small, high windows, cutting golden lines across the wooden floor. It was the kind of place that smelled of old wood, metal, and a faint hint of oil, a smell that somehow felt alive. The man who walked in was not a stranger to quiet spaces. He loved them, loved the way they seemed to hold secrets that no one else could see. Yet today the air felt different. It was heavier, more charged, as if the room itself was waiting for something to happen. At the center of the room, on a small, worn table, lay an object that everyone in the building had been talking about for months. It was not large, maybe no bigger than a shoebox, but there was something about it that made it impossible to ignore. Its surface was smooth, almost polished, yet it seemed old, ancient even. The edges were slightly curved, and it had a quiet weight to it, a presence that felt almost human. People had called it strange, mysterious, even dangerous, and all of them, in one voice, warned him the same thing. "Don't touch it," they said. Every day he heard it from different people. Sometimes it was a coworker, sometimes an old family friend who had been around forever, and sometimes just someone passing through the workshop. They didn't say it with anger or malice. Their tone was careful, almost reverent. But the words always carried the same weight, the same warning, as if touching it could awaken something they didn't fully understand. He had been coming to this place for years. He had fixed tools, cleaned shelves, and arranged materials. He had learned to listen to the small sounds of the workshop, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the machines, even the tiny ticks that came from the clocks that lined the walls. But today his attention was entirely on that object. He had seen it many times before, of course. Everyone had. But until now, he had always looked at it from a distance, with caution, even fear. Today, though, something had shifted inside him. It started as curiosity. A quiet, insistent curiosity that grew every time he passed the table. There was a pattern in the way the light fell on it, the way the dust seemed to gather in gentle spirals around its base. It was almost as if it was waiting for someone to notice, for someone to see it the way he saw it. He felt drawn to it in a way he could not explain. The warnings, instead of stopping him, only made him want to understand it more. He wanted to know why everyone was so afraid, why they treated it with such care, and what made it so important that it needed to be untouched. Every now and then he would come close, his eyes tracing its edges, his fingers twitching as if they wanted to reach out but stopped just short. He would take a step back, feeling the tension rise in his chest, the pulse of excitement mixed with fear. He wondered how it felt, whether it was cold or warm, hard or soft. He imagined what it would be like to hold it, to feel its weight in his hands. But he never did. Not yet. The people around him noticed. Some shook their heads, muttering under their breath about curiosity being dangerous. Others watched quietly, sensing the struggle inside him. They knew that he was different from most. He was careful, patient, and thoughtful. He did not rush into things. Yet there was a spark in him, a spark that made them all nervous because it meant that sooner or later he would make a choice. That morning, he lingered longer than usual. The workshop was emptier than it had been before. Most of the other workers had gone home or were busy in the back, leaving him alone with the object. The silence was not uncomfortable. On the contrary, it felt inviting, almost like the room itself was giving him permission to be there, to study it. He crouched slightly, his eyes level with the table, and looked closer than he had ever looked before. The object was strange. Its surface seemed ordinary at first, but the longer he stared, the more details emerged. Tiny lines ran across it, etched deep into the material, almost like a secret language. There were curves and shapes that did not make sense, patterns that seemed random but were too precise to be accidental. He leaned closer, trying to make sense of them. He could feel his heart beating faster, a mixture of fear and excitement. It was as if the object was alive, or at least aware of him. He remembered the warnings again, the voices repeating the same phrase in his mind. "Don't touch it." But this time the words felt different. They were not just warnings. They were a challenge to understand, to see, to try. And somewhere deep inside he felt ready to accept it. He did not know why he felt that way, only that he could not turn away. He sat back slightly, rubbing his hands together as he tried to steady himself. He thought about the consequences, about what might happen if he reached out. What if it broke? What if it triggered something he could not control? The possibilities were endless, and most of them were frightening. But alongside the fear, there was a thrill, a pull that he could not resist. The workshop seemed to grow warmer, the light brighter, and the object called to him in a way that no one else could hear. As he continued to study it, memories of other times came to him. Times when he had followed his curiosity and discovered something wonderful. Times when he had hesitated and missed opportunities. He thought about how fleeting moments like this could be, how rare it was to feel something so powerful and unknown. His decision was forming, slowly, carefully, like a seed breaking through the soil. He would reach out. He had to. But first he had to prepare. He cleaned his hands on a cloth, making sure there was no dirt or oil that could damage it. He adjusted his position, steadying his breathing. Every small movement felt amplified, every sound in the room louder. He could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the distance, the subtle creak of the floorboards as he shifted slightly. Even the dust particles in the sunbeams seemed to move in anticipation. For a long time he just sat there, hovering in that moment between fear and action. He was aware of everything. The smell of the wood, the cool air on his skin, the quiet hum of the workshop. He was aware of himself, of the rapid beat of his heart and the way his fingers itched to touch, to explore, to understand. And he was aware of the object, waiting patiently, silently, as if it had been expecting him all along. Then, something strange happened. As he gazed at it, he felt a subtle vibration, almost like a whisper under his fingertips. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it made his skin tingle. He leaned closer, holding his breath, afraid that even a small movement might break the spell. The vibration grew slightly, as if responding to his attention, acknowledging his presence. It was not threatening, not dangerous. It was inviting. The man felt a shiver run down his spine. All the warnings, all the caution he had been taught, all the fear in the voices of others seemed to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. He understood, in that quiet, charged moment, that the warnings had not been meant to scare him away. They had been meant to prepare him, to make him ready for the moment when he would finally reach out. He took a deep breath and raised his hand slowly. His fingers trembled slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. He could feel every muscle in his hand, every nerve alive with sensation. The object sat there, silent and patient, waiting for the moment that had been building for weeks, months, perhaps even years. The workshop seemed to hold its breath with him, the light in the room softening as if to watch the next step unfold. He hovered there, just a few inches above the surface, feeling the pull stronger than ever. He knew that once he touched it, everything would change. He did not know how or why, only that something extraordinary was about to happen. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, steadying himself, and when he opened them again, the decision was made. The man's fingers moved closer, drawn to the object with a certainty he had never felt before. The air felt charged, alive, and the quiet workshop seemed to hum with anticipation. He was aware of the warnings, aware of the voices telling him not to touch, aware of the possibility of the unknown. And yet, for the first time, he felt a calm certainty that this was exactly where he was meant to be. And so, with a careful, deliberate movement, he reached out. He paused for a moment, his fingers hovering just above the surface of the object. The air felt thick, as if it had been waiting for this exact instant. The small workshop, with its familiar smells and quiet corners, seemed transformed. Shadows stretched longer than usual, the sunbeams sharper, almost like they were reaching toward him to witness what he was about to do. His heart raced, not with panic, but with the kind of excitement that makes the skin tingle and the mind sharpen. Every warning he had ever heard, every cautionary word, every voice saying "don't touch it," seemed to fade into the background, replaced by something far stronger, an almost magnetic pull toward the object. He could not explain it. No one had ever explained it. But he felt it in his bones, in his fingers, in the steady beat of his heart. It was calling him. The surface below his fingertips looked ordinary, yet the closer he stared, the more details emerged. Tiny grooves, almost invisible, traced patterns he could not name. They twisted and turned in ways that seemed random but also deliberate, as if someone, somewhere, had crafted them with a secret in mind. A faint shimmer caught the corner of his eye, a reflection from somewhere inside the object that no one else could see. It flickered, subtle and brief, but it was enough to make him lean closer. For a long moment he did nothing. He studied it, memorized it, absorbed every line and shadow. He thought about all the times curiosity had guided him to something remarkable, all the moments when he had paused just in time to notice a small detail that others overlooked. That same instinct was alive now, more alive than ever. His mind raced with possibilities. What if it was just an ordinary object, beautifully made, fragile and delicate? Or what if it was something more, something hidden, waiting for the right person to unlock it? The man had never been one to act recklessly. Yet here he was, frozen and poised, aware that a single movement could change everything. He flexed his fingers slightly, feeling the tension in the joints, the tiny hairs on his arms standing on end. He imagined what it might feel like to finally make contact. Would it be cold like metal, warm like polished wood, or something he could not describe at all, something that defied the senses? The thought made him shiver with anticipation. The room was quiet, too quiet. Even the faint humming of the machines in the back seemed to have stopped. The only sound was the soft creak of the floor beneath him, the slow, deliberate beat of his own heart, and the whisper of the air moving past the windows. He could almost feel the object breathing beneath his fingers, waiting for the moment he had been thinking about for weeks. Every instinct in his body told him to hesitate, to step back and respect the warnings. And yet, every instinct also told him that this was exactly the moment he had been preparing for, exactly the moment he had been meant to experience. He took another deep breath. The tension in his chest tightened and loosened with the rhythm of the air entering and leaving his lungs. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the electricity of curiosity that ran like a current through him. The shimmer in the object grew, a tiny pulse of light that seemed almost alive. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it made him lean closer, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. The first brush of temptation came not from the object itself, but from the imagination. He imagined what could happen if he touched it. A spark of energy might leap into his fingers. A secret could unfold, revealing knowledge that had been hidden for years. He imagined a sound, a glow, a reaction that no one else had ever witnessed. The possibilities were endless, and each one made his mind race faster, his body ache to reach out. And then came the hesitation, a small, careful thought, reminding him of every warning, every voice, every person who had said, "Don't touch it." What if it broke? What if something inside it reacted violently? What if he was not meant to touch it at all? He froze, his hands suspended in midair, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down like a stone on his chest. He wanted to pull back, to retreat to safety, to leave the mystery unsolved. But he could not. The pull was too strong, the curiosity too deep, the moment too perfect. He remembered the small lessons from his life, the moments when hesitation had led to missed opportunities, when patience had finally rewarded him with something extraordinary. He reminded himself that he did not have to rush. He could approach it carefully, study it, explore it with the gentleness of someone handling something fragile. He could test the boundaries, see what the object was willing to give without forcing anything. The thought gave him courage, a quiet strength that spread through his fingers and into his chest. Slowly, he brought his hand closer. Inch by inch, fingertip by fingertip, he hovered above the object, aware of the tiniest shift in the air, the faintest vibration under his skin. It was alive, he could feel it, as if it were responding to his attention, acknowledging his presence. The air seemed warmer here, the light softer, and the room itself seemed to lean in, quiet and attentive. The world outside ceased to exist, leaving only him, the object, and the fragile thread of anticipation that connected them. He reached out 1 more inch. The vibration under his fingers grew slightly, a pulse that made his skin tingle. He felt the energy of the object, subtle but undeniable, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. The light inside it shimmered again, a tiny flicker that danced along the surface and caught the corner of his eye. He could see patterns moving, shapes twisting just beneath the surface. They were impossible to describe, and yet completely clear to him. It was as if the object were speaking a language only he could understand, a silent message meant to be received by someone patient enough to notice. And then, just as he was about to withdraw in hesitation, something extraordinary happened. The air seemed to hum softly, a gentle vibration that ran along his fingertips and up his arm. A faint warmth spread through his hand, and the object reacted, ever so slightly, to his touch. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. He felt a shiver run through him, not of fear, but of recognition. The moment had arrived. The object had chosen him as much as he had chosen to approach it. He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the sensation, feeling the delicate balance between curiosity and caution. He reminded himself that he did not need to rush. He could explore, could observe, could let the moment unfold naturally. His hand hovered just above the surface, waiting for the perfect instant to make contact. And when he opened his eyes again, the shimmer inside the object had grown slightly, a tiny glow that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The temptation was overwhelming now. It was no longer a thought, no longer a question of possibility. It was a pull, a demand, a quiet insistence that he touch it. He could see the tiny patterns moving beneath the surface, the flicker of light dancing across the edges, the faint vibration that seemed alive. Every part of him ached to feel it, to hold it, to explore the mystery that had been waiting for so long. He was aware of every sound, every smell, every sensation in the room, yet none of it mattered except for the connection he felt with the object. He leaned in slightly, brushing his fingers against the surface. The contact was brief, a whisper of sensation, yet it was enough to ignite something deep inside him. The object responded instantly, pulsing faintly, almost as if it recognized him. A warmth spread through his fingers, a gentle energy that made his skin tingle. He could feel the lines and grooves beneath his touch, the hidden textures that no one else could see. It was delicate, fragile, and yet alive. For a long moment, he simply held his hand above it, feeling the subtle reaction, savoring the sensation. He did not rush. He did not force it. He simply allowed himself to exist in the space between curiosity and discovery, between fear and wonder. The vibration grew stronger, the glow more distinct, and he realized that this was only the beginning. The object had secrets, hidden and waiting, and he was the one it had chosen to reveal them to. And in that moment he understood something profound. The warnings had not been meant to stop him. They had been meant to prepare him, to test his patience, his attention, his ability to respect the delicate balance of the unknown. And now, having approached with care and focus, he was ready to experience what few had ever witnessed. The object had responded, and he knew that once he allowed his fingers to explore fully, the magic would begin. He took a deep breath, steadying his mind and body. The anticipation, the tension, the thrill of the unknown, all converged into a single moment of clarity. He was ready, and as he moved his fingers closer, brushing against the surface more fully this time, he felt it. The first hint of something extraordinary, something beyond explanation, something that would change everything he thought he knew about the world and about himself. The object responded to him, gently, carefully, like a living thing acknowledging the touch of someone it had been waiting for. And in that quiet, golden moment, the line between curiosity and creation began to blur, and the man realized that he was no longer just an observer. He was a participant, a part of something far greater, a story that had been waiting to be written by his own hands. The man's hand trembled slightly, though not with fear. The tremor was excitement, a thrill that ran from his fingertips to the tips of his toes. He had hovered over the object for what felt like hours, though in reality it had been only moments. Each heartbeat was loud in his chest, each breath deliberate, as if the workshop itself had slowed down to match his pace. The object seemed to hum beneath his fingers now, faint but unmistakable, a vibration that seemed to recognize his presence. Finally, he let his fingers rest lightly on the surface. It was smoother than he had expected, like glass polished for centuries, yet warm, as if it had been waiting to welcome him. The moment his skin made contact, a ripple of energy ran up his arm. It was subtle, gentle, almost like the brush of a summer breeze, but it carried a force that made his mind expand and his senses sharpen. He gasped softly, not from shock, but from awe. The air in the room seemed to thrum with life, a quiet melody that only he could hear. The patterns on the object shifted beneath his touch. Tiny grooves, lines, and curves rearranged themselves as if alive, responding to the slightest movement of his fingers. It was mesmerizing, a dance of shapes and light that no one else could have imagined. He traced them slowly, deliberately, feeling the textures under his fingertips, noting the subtleties in each ridge and indentation. Every touch brought a new sensation, a new understanding, and yet it was impossible to predict what would happen next. He tried to move his hand carefully, testing the limits of the object's reaction. The instant he shifted, the surface seemed to follow, bending in ways that defied logic. Light flickered along the edges, soft at first, then stronger, brighter, bathing the workshop in a glow that was not harsh but warm and inviting. He could see shapes forming in the illumination, vague at first, like shadows in the corner of one's vision, then slowly more distinct. There was a rhythm to it, a pattern that seemed to flow with his touch, as if his fingers were conducting a silent orchestra. He felt a sense of calm wash over him, as though the object trusted him, guiding his movements without forcing him. It was not just responding, it was communicating, showing him that he was part of something greater than himself. The hum beneath his hand grew louder, resonating through his body in a way that made his chest vibrate and his stomach tighten with a mix of fear and wonder. He had never experienced anything like this. Nothing in his life had prepared him for the feeling of something so alive beneath his touch. Then came the first truly magical moment. As he pressed lightly on one corner, a thin line of golden light traced itself across the surface, following the path of his fingertip. It glowed brighter as he moved, leaving a trail that seemed to float just above the object, shimmering and fading slowly. He blinked, unsure if his eyes were deceiving him, but the light remained, bending and flowing exactly as he guided it. A thrill ran through him, and for the first time, he laughed quietly, a soft sound of pure joy and disbelief. He experimented further, curious and cautious in equal measure. One finger traced a spiral pattern, and the light responded immediately, twisting into intricate loops and curves that glowed with an intensity he had never imagined. Another finger tapped lightly, and tiny sparks jumped from the surface, dissipating in the air like fireflies. He was mesmerized. Each movement created a new visual symphony, a dance of energy and light that obeyed his touch. It was delicate and powerful all at once, a combination that left him breathless. The workshop, once quiet and still, now seemed alive with possibilities. The sunbeams cutting across the floor glimmered differently, reflecting the light of the object and casting dancing patterns on the walls. Dust motes floated in the air, catching the golden glow and swirling as if they too were part of the magic. He realized he could feel every movement, every change, as though the object had become an extension of his own body. It was no longer something separate from him. It was an instrument, a partner in creation, waiting for him to bring it to life. As he continued to explore, he noticed a faint vibration beneath the surface, almost like a heartbeat. He rested both hands lightly on the object, feeling the rhythm sync with his own pulse. The energy seemed to grow stronger, more focused, and he realized that his own emotions, his own intent, influenced the way it responded. Curiosity brought subtle patterns. Joy brought bursts of light. Careful precision created delicate, intricate designs that hovered above the surface like tiny floating sculptures. He was discovering that he was not just interacting with it, he was shaping it, guiding it, co-creating something extraordinary. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. His mind was sharp, aware of every nuance, yet lost in the wonder of the moment. Every new motion created something unexpected, a new reaction that kept him on edge, alert and amazed. He leaned closer, brushing a finger across a thin ridge, and suddenly, the surface responded with a brilliant cascade of light that arched into the air, forming patterns that looked almost alive. The shapes twisted, turned, and hovered for a moment before fading, leaving him speechless. It was beautiful, breathtaking, impossible to describe in words, and entirely his own creation. He realized that the warnings he had heard all those months ago were not meant to frighten him but to prepare him. This object, he understood now, was extraordinary, delicate, and powerful. It needed respect, patience, and a gentle hand. And he had been ready. The combination of caution and curiosity, the slow approach, the careful observation, had allowed him to connect with it in a way no one else could. And in return, it had revealed its magic to him, fully, completely, and without reservation. He experimented further, testing the limits of the connection. He swirled his fingers in wide arcs, and the light followed precisely, forming intricate loops that shimmered and then faded. He tapped lightly in rhythm, and sparks danced from the surface, spinning in perfect arcs before vanishing. Each movement created a cascade of reactions, and he felt the thrill of creation in its purest form. It was intoxicating, a joy so intense it made him dizzy and lightheaded, yet it never overwhelmed him. He had complete control, guided by intuition, patience, and the delicate feedback of the object itself. At one point, he paused, lifting his hands slightly and watching the object respond on its own. The light lingered, forming soft shapes that floated above the surface like faint whispers of color. Tiny sparks arced between the patterns, and the golden glow illuminated the entire room, reflecting off walls, ceilings, and the dusty floor. He felt a sense of pride and awe wash over him. He was not only witnessing something incredible, he was making it happen. His own touch, guided by patience and curiosity, had brought the magic to life. He laughed softly, again, the sound pure and unrestrained. The workshop felt warmer, brighter, almost alive with energy. He traced the patterns slowly, deliberately, learning the way they responded to different pressures, angles, and rhythms. He felt an intimacy with the object that went beyond understanding. It was a partnership, a dance between him and something ancient and extraordinary. And in that partnership, he discovered a joy that had been waiting for him, quiet and patient, ready to reward those who dared to explore. Time seemed to lose meaning. Minutes passed like seconds, yet each moment was packed with wonder and discovery. The object responded to every gesture, every touch, every thought that passed through his mind. He realized that creation was not just about skill or knowledge. It was about presence, awareness, and respect. The more mindful he was, the more delicate and beautiful the results became. He felt a thrill, a deep satisfaction, and a profound connection to something larger than himself. And then, as he continued to explore, he noticed something he had not expected. The patterns of light and energy began to take shapes that were familiar yet impossible. Tiny symbols, intricate and delicate, appeared above the surface, forming images that seemed to tell a story. They shimmered with movement, shifting subtly, as if alive. He leaned closer, tracing them carefully, realizing that his touch was not only creating beauty, it was unlocking secrets, revealing hidden messages encoded in the object itself. He spent hours experimenting, exploring, and discovering. Each movement, each touch, revealed new facets of the magic. He felt a deep joy and gratitude that went beyond words. This was more than curiosity rewarded. This was a rare, extraordinary connection, a chance to interact with something ancient, mysterious, and alive. And he had found it, simply by listening, observing, and daring to reach out with care. By the time he finally leaned back, his hands tingling from the energy, he realized he had done something extraordinary. The workshop was bathed in a soft, golden glow, the light from the object casting moving patterns across the walls and floor. His heart still raced, but now with a calm joy, a satisfaction that came from understanding and participating in something magical. He had touched the object, respected it, and in return, it had revealed wonders that no one else had ever seen. He smiled quietly, aware of the moment's significance. He had created something with his own fingers, something alive, beautiful, and impossible to describe. And yet, the most important realization was this: the magic had not come from the object alone. It had come from the connection between them, from his patience, his curiosity, his care, and the trust he had earned. This was not just magic. It was pure, human magic, a creation born from awareness, courage, and wonder. The glow of the object filled the workshop, soft and golden, like sunlight trapped in a crystal. He leaned back slightly, letting his hands hover above it, feeling the last waves of energy pulse through his fingertips. The patterns of light continued to dance, twisting and turning in ways that seemed alive, each shape delicate, intricate, and fleeting. He could not believe what he had just witnessed. For years, he had been curious, cautious, and patient, and now the reward was undeniable. He had created something extraordinary, something that seemed to hum with life, responding to him as if it had been waiting just for him. He realized slowly that this was bigger than curiosity or wonder. The patterns he had created were not random. They were a language, a message encoded in shapes and light, waiting for someone with patience and care to discover. He leaned closer, studying the designs, tracing them gently with his fingertips, amazed at the precision and intelligence behind every twist and curve. The object was not just beautiful. It was clever. It was alive in a way that challenged everything he thought he knew. As he explored further, he heard a soft sound behind him. Someone had entered the workshop. He did not turn immediately, fearing the interruption might break the delicate balance he had achieved. But the sound came again, closer this time, a quiet gasp of amazement. Slowly, he turned his head and saw a colleague standing in the doorway. The expression on their face was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and awe. Their eyes were wide, reflecting the golden glow that filled the room. I don't understand," the person whispered, stepping cautiously closer. Is it supposed to do that?" He shook his head slightly, a small smile on his lips. "I think it's showing me what it wants," he said softly, careful not to disturb the delicate patterns of light. "I don't know how or why, but it's responding." The colleague stepped closer, hesitant, as if drawn by the magic in the room but still wary of breaking it. They watched in silence, mesmerized, as the patterns shifted and danced, reflecting off the walls, the ceiling, and even their own hands. The workshop no longer felt ordinary. It was a place of wonder, a space where creation itself seemed alive and responsive. The air hummed faintly with energy, and the golden light seemed to wrap around them, filling the room with warmth as more people arrived, drawn by the soft glow and the murmured words of astonishment. The man remained calm, careful not to disturb the fragile beauty he had uncovered. Each visitor reacted differently. Some whispered, unable to speak above a breath. Others reached out tentatively, but the patterns shifted only when he guided them, as if the object recognized him alone. He realized that the warnings he had heard all along were not about danger but about respect. It required patience, care, and the right person to reveal its true nature. An older colleague, someone who had been around the workshop for decades, stepped forward slowly, shaking their head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like this," they said quietly, awe in their voice. "I thought the stories were exaggerations, but this is extraordinary. How did you do it?" He smiled faintly, unsure how to explain. He did not feel that he had done it in the way people might understand. It was a collaboration, a partnership with the object. He had been careful, patient, and observant. He had approached it with respect and curiosity, and in return it had revealed itself. "I didn't do it alone," he said softly. It responded to me. I think it was waiting for someone to notice it properly." The older colleague nodded slowly, stepping back to watch again. The patterns of light were now more intricate, twisting into forms that suggested letters, symbols, even tiny illustrations. The golden glow formed arcs and spirals that hovered above the surface like delicate floating sculptures. Sparks danced lightly along the edges, disappearing before they touched anything. Every person in the room watched in silence, unable to look away, caught in the spell of something they could not fully understand but could feel deeply. He realized that the object had more to reveal than he had imagined. It was not just a simple artifact or a decorative piece. It was a vessel of knowledge, a hidden message encoded in form and light. The more he interacted with it, the more the patterns became coherent, forming sequences and symbols that suggested a story, a purpose, a meaning. He traced the lines carefully, his mind absorbing the shapes, recognizing connections and relationships that were subtle but deliberate. The reactions around him varied. Some people whispered excitedly to one another, pointing out details they had never noticed before. Others remained silent, overwhelmed by the beauty and the mystery of what they were witnessing. Children who had wandered and stared wide-eyed, unable to speak, their small hands pressed to their cheeks as they tried to take in the spectacle. The room was alive not just with light and energy, but with awe, a collective recognition that something rare and extraordinary was unfolding before them. He felt a deep sense of responsibility settle over him. The object had chosen to reveal its magic to him, and now it was clear that the story it held was meant to be shared, understood, and preserved. He moved slowly, deliberately, guiding the patterns, coaxing them into forms that seemed to communicate meaning. Golden arcs formed letters that suggested words, spirals indicated sequences, and tiny flickers hinted at connections he had never imagined. Each touch brought clarity, each movement revealed something new, and the sense of wonder deepened with every passing moment. A colleague who had been quiet the entire time finally spoke, their voice trembling with emotion. This isn't just magic, they said. It's intelligence. It's understanding. It's alive. He nodded, careful not to disrupt the patterns that shimmered above the surface. I think it's a message, he said. It's been waiting for someone to see it properly, to interact with it the right way. And now, it's showing us what it's meant to show. As the golden patterns continued to dance, the workshop felt transformed. It was no longer just a room filled with tools, wood, and metal. It was a space of discovery, a place where creativity and intelligence intersected in ways that defied ordinary understanding. Every person present felt it, the thrill of witnessing something extraordinary, something alive, something that had waited decades, perhaps centuries, to be revealed. The man realized that the object's magic was not dangerous. It was delicate, yes, fragile, yes, but it was also generous. It responded to care, to attention, to intention. It rewarded those who approached it with respect and curiosity and remained still or resistant to those who did not. He had understood this instinctively, but seeing it manifest so clearly in the reactions of others confirmed the lesson. Respect and patience, combined with awareness and sensitivity, were the keys to unlocking its power. As the visitors watched, he guided the patterns into more complex arrangements. Tiny images emerged, symbols that seemed to tell stories, abstract designs that conveyed motion and intention, and sequences that suggested meaning and purpose. The golden light wrapped around them, reflecting in their eyes, making them part of the creation itself. Each movement of his fingers created a ripple, a new possibility, a new revelation. He felt a sense of awe not just for the object, but for the human capacity to interact with it, to connect with it, and to recognize the beauty and intelligence it contained. An older expert, someone familiar with rare artifacts and ancient designs, leaned closer, studying the patterns. Their expression shifted from skepticism to amazement. I've studied objects like this for years, they said softly, almost in disbelief. But I've never seen anything respond like this. This is extraordinary. You've unlocked something no one else could. He shook his head slightly, humbled. It wasn't me alone, he said. It's responding. It's showing itself. I just guided it gently, watched carefully, and let it lead. The expert nodded slowly, clearly impressed. Others in the room exchanged looks, silent recognition of the rare opportunity they were witnessing. No one spoke for a long moment. The only sounds were the hum of the patterns, the gentle crackle of sparks, and the soft, collective breaths of the audience. It was as if time itself had slowed, holding its breath in anticipation, watching this extraordinary collaboration unfold. He realized then that the object was teaching something larger than itself. It was showing the power of observation, patience, and care. It was demonstrating that curiosity, when combined with respect and focus, could reveal wonders that otherwise remained hidden. And in that lesson, he saw the connection between his own journey and the reactions of everyone around him. This was not just magic. It was understanding, communication, and creativity made tangible, alive, and beautiful. As the light patterns continued to evolve, forming new sequences and designs, he felt a deep sense of purpose. The object had chosen him not to show power or impress, but to reveal truth, to convey meaning, to teach. And now, with the room filled with witnesses, he realized that the revelation was complete. The object's secrets had been unlocked, and its message was clear. Care, curiosity, patience, and attention were the keys to creation, understanding, and wonder. The golden glow slowly began to fade, leaving the patterns suspended in the air for a moment before dissolving entirely. The room returned to its familiar light, the workshop quiet once more. Yet the energy remained, a subtle hum that lingered in the air, in the hearts of everyone present, in the memory of what had just been witnessed. The object had shared its magic, its intelligence, and its beauty. And in doing so, it had left an impression that would not fade, a story that would be remembered and retold for years. The man finally pulled his hands away, resting them on his knees. His fingers still tingled, and his heart raced with the thrill of discovery. He looked around at the faces of those who had watched, seeing their awe, their wonder, and their disbelief. For a moment, words were unnecessary. They all understood what had happened, what had been revealed, and the rarity of the experience. He smiled quietly to himself, aware that the magic had not just come from the object, but from the interaction, the connection, and the shared moment of discovery. And in that quiet, golden afterglow, he realized that the revelation was only the beginning. The glow had faded, but the memory of it lingered in the workshop. The air no longer shimmered with golden light, yet it felt alive in a quieter, subtler way. The patterns of energy, the sparks, the delicate arcs of illumination, everything had disappeared, leaving the object calm and still. And yet, the man knew it had changed him, and he could feel that it had changed everyone who had witnessed it. The sense of wonder remained, a warm hum beneath the surface of the room, a reminder that the extraordinary could be found if one approached with patience, curiosity, and care. He looked around at the faces of those present. Some were still staring, silent, as if trying to absorb what they had just experienced. Others whispered to each other in hushed tones, pointing out details they had never noticed before. The expressions were a mixture of disbelief, awe, and deep admiration. It was clear that no one would forget this moment. The workshop had become more than a place of tools and materials. It had become a place of discovery, of revelation, of magic that was alive and accessible to those willing to see it. The man slowly stepped back from the object, resting his hands on the table beside it. His fingers tingled faintly, still carrying the subtle energy of the interaction. He breathed deeply, savoring the calm that followed the storm of creation. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a realization that he had been part of something extraordinary, something rare, something that few ever had the chance to witness. He had touched the object, guided it, and in return, it had revealed wonders beyond imagination. As he reflected, he realized that the significance of what had happened extended far beyond the workshop. The patterns he had created, the secrets he had uncovered, the messages encoded in the light, they were not merely visual marvels. They were a testament to the power of human curiosity and the rewards of approaching the unknown with care. The magic had come not just from the object, but from the connection between him and it, a collaboration of awareness, intuition, and patience. It was proof that the simplest human qualities could unlock extraordinary potential. Word of the discovery spread quickly, first to a few colleagues, then to the larger circle of the workshop and eventually beyond. People came from far and wide, curious to see the object, to witness its magic, and to understand the story of the man who had unlocked it. And though the patterns no longer danced as they had during that first encounter, everyone could sense the energy, the history, and the intelligence contained within it. They understood that what had been revealed was not fleeting, not trivial, but enduring, a story of connection and discovery that could inspire generations. The man began to think about how to share what he had learned. He knew that the object's magic was delicate, that it required care, respect, and understanding. He could not simply hand it over to anyone or expect them to replicate the moment. It was a gift that needed to be guided, taught, and appreciated. And so, he began to work quietly, documenting what he had discovered, noting the patterns, the sequences, and the responses, careful not to disrupt the object but to preserve the knowledge he had gained. As he worked, others watched and learned. They saw how he approached the object, how he listened to its subtle reactions, how he guided the patterns with patience and attention. They began to understand that the magic was not in forcing or commanding, but in observing, respecting, and interacting with care. The lesson was clear. True wonder came not from control, but from collaboration, from a gentle partnership between human curiosity and the intelligence of the unknown. The workshop became a place of learning. People came not just to see the object, but to understand the principles it revealed. The man taught them how to approach it, how to observe carefully, and how to interact with patience and respect. Each person who followed his guidance discovered something unique, something personal, something that resonated deeply within them. And though none could replicate the exact patterns he had created, each experienced the magic in their own way, leaving the workshop richer, fuller, and more alive than ever before. Months passed, and the impact of the discovery continued to grow. The object, once mysterious and forbidden, became a symbol of human curiosity and the power of careful observation. It inspired others to explore, to ask questions, and to approach the unknown with patience and care. Students, artists, engineers, and thinkers came to study it, each discovering insights that extended beyond the object itself, into the broader world of creation, problem-solving, and imagination. The man watched all of this quietly, with humility and satisfaction. He knew that the magic had not come from him alone. He had been the catalyst, the observer, the participant, but the object had revealed its wonders because it had chosen to, because he had approached it with the right balance of curiosity and respect. He had learned something profound, that magic, beauty, and understanding often wait for those who are willing to be present, attentive, and patient. It was a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. One evening, as the sun set and the workshop was bathed in a soft orange glow, he sat alone for a moment, reflecting on the journey. He thought about the first time he had stood before the object, hesitant and curious, warned repeatedly not to touch it. He remembered the tension, the anticipation, and the thrill of finally making contact. And he realized that every warning, every moment of doubt, had prepared him for this experience. Without them, he might not have been ready to receive the magic fully. He smiled quietly, a mixture of pride and gratitude washing over him. The object had changed him, yes, but it had also changed everyone around him. It had shown the power of human attention, the rewards of careful observation, and the beauty that could emerge when curiosity met respect. And in that moment, he understood that the true legacy of the discovery was not just the patterns of light, but the inspiration it sparked, the lessons it taught, and the connections it created between people and the extraordinary. As the years passed, the story of the object and the man who unlocked its magic became part of the workshop's history, a tale told to new generations of visitors and learners. People would enter the room, aware of its significance, feeling the lingering energy, and listening to the story of patience, respect, and curiosity that had brought it to life. And though the object itself remained silent at times, its influence continued, inspiring creativity, wonder, and discovery in ways that words alone could not capture. The man continued to visit the workshop regularly, often alone, sometimes with others who shared his curiosity. He would trace the surface gently, feeling the faint pulse of energy, remembering the patterns he had created and the reactions of those who had witnessed them. He realized that the magic was never truly gone. It lived in the attention he gave it, the care he took, and the stories he shared. It was a living memory, a lesson, and a source of inspiration that could never be taken away. And sometimes late at night, when the workshop was quiet and the air was still, he would feel the faint hum beneath his fingertips, a reminder that the extraordinary was always there, waiting for the right touch, the right moment, and the right person to bring it to life. It was a promise, a whisper, a subtle invitation to continue exploring, learning, and creating. And he knew that, as long as he approached with curiosity, respect, and care, the magic would never truly end. The legacy of that moment extended far beyond the workshop. Students and artists inspired by the story created works of their own, exploring ideas and concepts they had never considered before. Engineers and thinkers found new solutions by applying the lessons of patience, observation, and collaboration. And families and friends, hearing the story, discovered the value of careful attention, of curiosity, and of daring to explore the unknown with respect and humility. The man understood that the magic had become bigger than himself, bigger than the object, bigger than the workshop. It had grown into a story, a lesson, a spark that ignited creativity and wonder wherever it touched. And he knew that he had been privileged to witness it, to guide it, and to be part of its unfolding. He had reached out when he was ready, and in return, he had experienced something that few would ever understand but that everyone could feel: the power of creation, the joy of discovery, and the beauty of human connection with the extraordinary. Even years later, when the object rested quietly on its table, the golden glow no longer visible, the memory of that day remained alive in the hearts of those who had been there. The patterns, the sparks, the floating arcs of light, they were gone, but the impact endured. The lessons learned, the inspiration sparked, the human magic that had been created, it was timeless. And the man, now older, wiser, and still curious, knew that he had touched something eternal, something that would continue to inspire long after the workshop had been emptied, long after the light had faded, and long after his own hands had aged. In the end, the magic was not just in the object. It was in the connection, in the attention, in the care, and in the courage to reach out when the moment was right. It was in the human spirit, in the willingness to explore the unknown, and in the understanding that some things are too extraordinary to ignore, too delicate to force, and too beautiful to be discovered by anything less than patience, respect, and pure intention. And so the story lived on. The workshop remained a place of quiet wonder, the object a symbol of possibility, and the man a reminder that magic, in its truest form, is created not by power or force, but by hands willing to touch, eyes willing to see, and a heart willing to understand. And in that quiet, enduring magic, he knew that he had found something that would last far beyond himself, far beyond the glowing patterns, and far beyond the fleeting moments of light, something eternal, human, and pure.